Welcome back to the Voices of Women Summit, where in honor of International Women's Day 2022, we are raising the voices of hundreds of women so their messages can be heard. Your host for this session is Elizabeth Magallon Fleury, founder of Elizabeth's Life Encore Planning. She has another amazing guest coming right up. Take it away, Elizabeth.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us here today on International Women's Day, Voices of Women Summit. My guest right now is Tamara Jefferies. Hi, Tamara, how are you?
Doing well. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, great. I'm so glad you could join us today. So Tamara Jefferies is the owner of Grow and Thrive Wellness and is a holistic trauma counselor, transformational coach, international yoga teacher, and author who helps professionals heal and transform their lives. In addition to her one-on-one holistic training and transformational coaching sessions, she also compassionately guides women in her sister circles online group counseling program. Tamara is the author of the groundbreaking Empowered Women's Guide to Healing Trauma course, a comprehensive and holistic approach to trauma recovery, delivering body-based, mindful tools to heal the mind, body, and spirit. So, Tamara, why don't you tell us, how did you get into this with your life, and how did this become a passion of yours?
Absolutely. My story starts in my late 20s. I had a dinner party for my birthday, and it was 10 of my closest girlfriends. It was a wonderful, wonderful party. But after the party, I was just thinking about all the people that were gathered there, and it occurred to me that 4 out of the 10 women there were all survivors of either sexual abuse or sexual assault, myself included. And that really was just this like lightning striking moment of like, this is not okay. I can't live in a world where this is just normal. And I know I can't stop this, but I can do something to fix it, to help it. So I want to help women heal. And that pretty much set my course. And from then I just kind of dived into the holistic realm. I got my master's degree in somatic psychology, which is the study of the mind-body connection. And I focused specifically on how to heal trauma. I got certifications in teaching yoga and massage because I knew that trauma lives in the body and we need different tools to help work it out. And then I did various other certifications for working with trauma. And since then, I've been working one-on-one with women or leading courses or support groups or women's empowerment workshops. It's just my whole practice has been about giving survivors the tools they need to reclaim their body and to reconnect with their joy and their purpose.
Oh, that's amazing. It sounds very comprehensive. And what I really liked what you said was, it's not just about the mind, it's about the body, and how you did the yoga and everything to learn how to take care of that as well. So you're treating both and helping people down the path that way. That's amazing. Awesome.
Yeah.
Your talk today is 3 essential keys to heal your trauma so you can be fearless and joyful. Why don't we start with the first essential key?
Absolutely. So when it comes to looking at trauma, one of the worst aspects of trauma is that it robs us of our full capacity for feeling. It especially robs us of our capacity for joy and sustained happiness. And we get locked in these patterns of fear and fight, flight, and trauma activation. And so in order to heal all that, we have to approach it mind, body, spirit, like I just was explaining to you. So the 3 keys are about befriending the body, befriending the mind, befriending the psyche, so that you can reclaim all these parts of yourself that get fragmented because of trauma. So the first key is befriending your nervous system. This is the big thing because our nervous system is so impacted by trauma, it becomes dysregulated is the word. And we want to bring back full self-regulation. And so just to give you a little bit of understanding of our nervous system, we have these two main components, the parasympathetic and the sympathetic. Sympathetic is all about fight and flight. Parasympathetic is about calm and restoration. And if we can bring those two back into harmony, we can restore our nervous system. And the way to do that is first through awareness. That's the first step to everything. We have to become aware that there's something that triggered us, and now we're spiraling out and all these things are happening in our mind and bodies. And so we want to come back to this place. Okay, it's like, okay, I'm now aware that this is happening. And we take a breath. That's the next thing. The breath is the next thing. Take a breath, come back into the present moment, feel your body. And the way the sympathetic, the nervous system is tied to the breath is that whenever we take long, slow, deep breaths, we're getting into the parasympathetic, into that restful state. Whereas if we take short, shallow breaths, like those breaths we take if we're hyperventilating, that is what gets us into the sympathetic. So we want to take long, deep breaths to come back into the parasympathetic, to come back into that place of calm. And the third is touch. Touch is so vital to our well-being. And I think this whole episode of the pandemic, when we couldn't like hug each other, I think that really showed us how important touch is. And so when it comes to like self-regulation, I like to instruct my clients to hold themselves, give yourself a hug and just start to squeeze up and down the arms. And it gives this feeling of containment. And that also helps the nervous system to calm down. It's just like when you hug a child who's upset and the child starts to calm down, it's the same exact thing, and we can do it for ourselves. So that's the first key.
Giving ourselves a hug.
Yes.
I like that. Yes. And I like how you said, that's what we do to soothe children, right? So why can't we do it for ourselves as well?
Absolutely.
Great. So what's number 2?
So number 2 is befriending the deep psyche, or the subconscious or the unconscious. Whenever we talk about these different levels of consciousness, what we're really talking about are different levels of awareness. So if you're talking about the unconscious, this part of us is just out of our normal everyday awareness. The subconscious is right below the surface where our dreams are, right? And so we want to befriend this aspect of ourselves, because when we go through a trauma, many times it just trickles down into the subconscious, and we have these things pop up from time to time, like nightmares, like night terrors. Some people who are trauma survivors have repetitive nightmares for years. I did, and I know that other of my clients did. And that's the deep psyche letting you know that this unresolved thing is still there below the surface. And so how do we work with that, right? So we have these inner aspects, like the inner child, the inner masculine, the inner feminine. There's a lot of writing around working with the inner child, because so many of us have this wounded little person within us that didn't get the care and the love that it needed. And so we can work with our inner child. And what I like to tell my clients to do is like, find a picture of yourself when you were a little person and put that in front of yourself, and then open a dialogue. Like, how are you doing? What do you need? Because that little person is still alive in us, and she or he still needs care. And we can dialogue with that aspect of ourselves. And sometimes the picture helps. We can also do this in our imaginations and just have a conversation with that part of us that still needs some tending to, and give it what it needs. And we can say things like, you did so much and you were so strong and so brave. And now I'm the grown up and I get to protect you, so you don't have to do that anymore. That's an example of how inner child work can work. So that's key number 2.
So like if I would say, okay, I'm going to go back to my 9-year-old self and think about what I was feeling or a trauma that I had at that point, and then say, okay, as an adult now, what I would say to myself as that 9-year-old.
Yeah. Like there's an example of bullying, for example, huge thing, huge problem. And for a child who was bullied, well, as an adult, you can go back to your child self who was bullied and say, what would you have liked to have said back then? Or what would you have liked to have done back then? And walk through that scenario with that part of yourself, and give the words, the courage, the movements, whatever it is that little aspect of yourself would like to have done back then instead of being bullied, and have that process.
That's great, because then it's kind of getting it out and voicing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's very helpful. And if anybody has any questions for Tamara as we go, please just drop it into the chat. So what would be your number 3 essential key?
So the number 3 essential key is befriending the body. But before I go into that, I just want to say this last thing about working with the inner child. It's a wonderful thing to journal if that's like a process that you are really into. Having that back and forth dialogue in your journal between your adult self and your child self can be really eye-opening and healing. So I want to recommend that.
Oh, and I will say, everybody, journaling. This is my second speaker today who talked about how amazing it is for journaling. So I think we should all try to add that into our routine. I don't think it has to be something major all the time, but yes, this is our second expert today telling us how important journaling can be in our health and well-being.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So now the third key is befriending the body, because trauma gets stored in the body. Trauma happened to the body. So we have to get it out of the body somehow. And the thing that happens with trauma, it's almost like time stops. Like whenever this traumatic thing happened, it's like time stops, and whatever was going on in the body and the nervous system and the mind in that moment is like frozen in time, and it's frozen in your body. So if you like, if a woman was attacked, say, and her body froze, that freezing still lives in her musculature. Even though she's walking around the world every day doing what she's going to do, there's still this element of like a frozen stiffness, a constriction in her muscles, right? And so how do we get that out? So the thing about going through a trauma is that when fight, flight happens or when freeze happens, those are defense mechanisms. They're great and they keep us alive. But the body wants to finish the process. So whatever the body would have liked to have done, it really wants to do. So if you wanted to shield yourself, if you wanted to push someone away, all these things the body still wants to do. And we can start to pay attention to the body in a really deep way to start to understand what it is that it wants to do. And so I call this a very deep listening and a very deep sensing to get into those, there's small sensations in the body. And again, we go back to the breath and taking these deep breaths and becoming present with ourselves and what the body is feeling. If you brought a memory to mind and notice what sensations are happening in the body, maybe you would have sensations in your jaw because you want to say something, or maybe you have sensations in your hands because you want to do something. And you just let those sensations kind of lead you. And it's like, if your hands wanted to do something, it's like asking yourself the question, if my hands could do anything right now, what would they do? And just notice that. And you don't have to do these grand gestures. It doesn't have to be this huge, like beating pillows and all this stuff. It can be just these small movements that are moving toward the completion of a process. Just that much, a millimeter of an inch or of a movement can start the process of the energy releasing. And I've seen it time and time again. So I know what I'm saying, that it doesn't have to be this huge thing. It's just about inviting the body and giving it permission to act in this way that it would have liked to. So even if you just initiate a movement, the body will do the rest in terms of the release from the muscles and that tension and constriction. So it's about deep listening, paying attention to the sensation of the body, and just giving your body permission to move in a way that it would have liked to have moved then.
Okay, well, that's very helpful. I like that, giving permission, and it's to your body and to yourself as well, right? Both emotionally and physically.
Right.
So
exactly.
what are some of the ways that you work with clients to help them move down this path?
So all the things that I have mentioned, like we start with the breath and become really comfortable with allowing the client to just drop in. Like I start every session with just breathing and becoming present with what's going on in the body so that they become aware of the sensations that are going on in their bodies at that time. That's the thing about trauma, is that you don't have to go into the past. You don't have to go into the story. Like everything is alive right now in this moment. And so if you just give yourself the permission to drop in, get still, and start to feel what the body is feeling, it will come to the surface to be processed out because it wants to be processed out. Like it really does.
Right.
So it's just giving yourself the time and the space to do that. And then we go through different processes. I walk my clients through a meditative process that gets them into the deep psyche so that they can work with the inner child, or they work with the inner masculine or inner feminine. And then I walk them through processes that get them deeply in the body so that they can start to understand these more nuanced sensations that the body is experiencing and get to the deeper levels of where the trauma is held. And we just allow for this expression again, like asking the body, what does it want to do right now? And just inviting it, but like bit by bit in very small steps and small movements. We have this word, we use in this work called titration. And to titrate means to just let something in bit by bit so the system isn't overwhelmed. And that's what we do.
Yeah,
baby steps. It's all about baby steps.
Yeah, baby steps. I same thing with my clients. It's baby steps. And
Yeah.
two, I think we have to like realign ourselves because we spend so much time tamping it down, keeping it down, right?
Yes.
That we have to be able to find a way to let it go. And it has to come in baby steps. It's not going to just, because then too, we don't want to just poof.
Yeah, exactly. Because then we'll just blow our nervous system out because we're like overwhelmed.
Right.
And we don't want to do that. We don't want to
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
that's great. That's great. So, what is your free gift that you have today to share with everyone?
Yes, my free gift is my 5 tips for living with more happiness and joy. And it's a PDF download.
That's great. That's great. All right. So
and actually, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say that brings me back to the title of the talk was how to heal these things so you can be fearless and joyful. Because once we start healing the trauma, our bodies, we start to drop away those layers of fear and we start to feel more in our bodies. And one of the things that happens is that we come back to this place of joy. And it's such a tremendous breakthrough for clients when they start to feel that for the first time and start feeling all of these different emotions that they didn't have access to before, and that's really one of the big indicators that you are healing is that you can now tap into that joy. But I also wanted to just add these few closing words around joy, because I don't want you to think that you have to go through this whole arduous process before you can feel joyful, because that's not the case. Like joy is something that's available to us all the time. And I just wanted to leave everyone with this really easy practice, if I can just share that with you. It's called the chair of joy. And it's literally like this wonderful, simple thing you do where you can identify a chair in your house, somewhere that you love to sit, or it doesn't have to be in your house. It can be like a park bench or a peak on a mountain, wherever you love to just sit and be. And imagine yourself sitting there, taking a few deep breaths, getting centered, and allow yourself to think about a really joyful time in your life. Just go back to those wonderful memories, because the wonderful thing about the mind is that it doesn't differentiate between our emotion, our imagination, what is right in front of us. It's all the same in terms of the chemicals that are released, the neurotransmitters that are released. So when we think about a joyful experience, it's just like we're having the joyful experience. The serotonin is still being released in our minds. So if you let yourself have that moment to sit and reflect, take a deep breath, bring up some joyful memories, and let yourself really feel that, you can tap into your joy anytime, anywhere. And it's really just a simple thing that can just take a couple of seconds. You can do it standing in line at the grocery store, like anywhere that you feel that you want to inject some joy in your day. It's just a wonderful thing to do.
That's great. And I think that's what's key for all of us, especially we're so busy now and everything. It's always like, I don't have the time. I don't have the time. It doesn't have to take an hour. It doesn't, you can find these small little ways to ground yourself, to bring, like you said, joy into your life. I love it. The chair. I love that. That's great. Well, everyone, I just wanted to mention our next speaker is going to be Dr. Sunny Fridge, and she is going to be talking about 5 types of fear holding you back from your success. So, and if everybody could drop a 1 in the chat to let us know that you were able to get Tamara's link, that would be great. We want to make sure you get her amazing free gift. And Tamara, why don't you some final words for our audience here today on Voices of Women Summit?
My final words are that, joy is a choice that we get to choose every day, every minute of the day. We have access to it every minute of the day. So just keep that in mind, that you can always make the choice to feel joy.
Oh, that's amazing. And really quick too, what about the fearless part? How do we tap into being fearless?
That is going back to the layer, like all these layers that we slough off after doing all this healing, that actually comes as a natural process of healing. We get to release ourselves from these shackles of the fear that the trauma first put us in. So as a natural process of healing, we just lose this and we come from a place of fear to a place of joy. It's a very organic process.
Oh, that's great. So it's not necessarily these specific things that we do to become fearless. It's part of each part of the process releases the fear as we go.
Exactly.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, that is great. And I'm just so glad that you were able to join us today. And again, I love the fact of how you've taken the approach of the mind and body together with this process of healing and moving forward. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's been wonderful. And everybody, make sure you get that free gift from Tamara and join us for our next speaker today. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much.
Thank you for joining us for another amazing session of the Voices of Women Summit, where our mission is to raise the voices of hundreds of women so their messages can be heard. For recordings of all sessions, plus an amazing VIP gift bundle, upgrade to VIP now. If you have any questions or problems during the summit, email our support team at support@voicesofwomensummit.com. Stay tuned. We have another fantastic speaker coming right up.